Welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, the show that celebrates the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. It is April 1st, April Fool's Day here in Mississippi. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi radio network or on Super Talk TV at Ceasefire TV. Or you might be watching the show on YouTube or Facebook or listening on your favorite podcast. We really appreciate you joining us on this April Fool's Day here in Mississippi. Hey, listen, I talk a lot about this on this show. We do, for if you go back and look at the last over 2 years of shows, what you're going to find is a lot of celebrating the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks employees. You're going to find a lot of celebrating with people who have a passion for the outdoors, what I would refer to as more campfire stories, talking about their love of the outdoors and specific hunts they've been on and those, that kind of stuff, or fishing trips they've been on, or, just the magnetic aspect of being in the outdoors. We're going to talk about that a lot, and we're going to celebrate that a lot. We're actually going to do a little bit of that on the show today. In fact, we're going to do a lot of that on the show today. But the other part of what we're doing with the legislative session that's going on, it's important for us to keep, the issues sort of front and center. We've had, a flurry of noise and activity coming from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission, and I've talked about that a lot because it's important. It's important. The work that they do, and I think too often the work of the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission has been out of sight and out of mind. And what I've tried to do is bring focus to the incredible responsibilities that they have, whether it be how they manage our state's wildlife resources or how they manage things like diseases, like CWD, for example. We've talked a lot about those things on this show, and we're going to continue to do that as we go forward. But, hey, listen, I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest in. And then I'm going to tell you about some news that I learned over the weekend, and we're going to chat about it because it's actually an important conversation, and it brings into focus a lot of things we need to be talking about in this state from an ethical hunting point of view, and really just from a managing disease point of view, the whole notion of baiting and how that works. But before we go any further, let me welcome my friend. He's been on the show many times. Somebody I have a tremendous amount of respect for and enjoy spending time with, but my friend Lake Pickle. How you doing, Lake?
I'm doing great, man. The respect is a two-way street. I have a lot of respect for you and what you do on the show and what you've been doing lately, and happy to be here today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, listen, I can't wait to get an update from you about your latest turkey hunting adventures, because you've been on a bunch of them lately. And I love hearing those stories, but we'll spend most of the show today actually talking about that. Over the weekend, I got a tip, and SuperTalk's got a great news effort, incidentally. When it's a news team that's independent of our shows, and they provide news, audio news, to 51 radio stations across the state of Mississippi. It's a news network. And then it's the 26 radio stations that are part of the SuperTalk Mississippi media family, and then there are other stations that are part of this news network. So they do a great job. It's led by J.T. Mitchell. He's our news director, and they just do fantastic work. People can go to supertalk.fm to see that news, or you can get the SuperTalk app and also get that. You can also sign up. When you go to supertalk.fm, you actually have an opportunity there to sign up for the newsletter, and they do these wonderful weeks in review and breaking news from time to time, but it's really, really good. The news effort is really, really good. But, they've been working on a story, and it's not fully developed. Now, people should know who are listening to this show, we're recording this about an hour ahead of when it's going to air. So actually between now and the time that this airs at noon or at 12:06, the story may be out. But I'm not going to get ahead of the story, to be quite honest with you. I'm going to let the team at SuperTalk News finish their work, and then we'll talk about it. We'll probably, join either Paul Gallo or Gerard and talk about it some more. Certainly we'll talk about it next week. People can go to supertalk.fm to get the latest as it relates to this news, or they can go to the SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page and get the latest as it relates to that news as well. But what I learned over the weekend is that a high-profile person in the conservation community was caught hunting over a baited field. Now, when people understand all the information swirling around this, they're going to think this is an April Fool's joke. Because what I could joke about is that This is on Friday. Here it is Monday. And as of the recording of this show, we still don't have an official statement from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks about this. So I don't have their piece of this. But a lot of corroborated sources. And what I have learned is that what I've said to the team at SuperTalk when they asked me about it, and said it's been crickets, from the department, crickets. I haven't heard anything. And but they've reached out, and there's been some communication going on, and I'm just going to let that news effort play itself out. But then I learned the bait that was being used was literally crickets, live crickets. The bait that was being used to hunt turkeys was live crickets, Lake. And look, I've turkey hunted some, but I've literally never heard of using live crickets. Have you?
I've I've never heard of it outside of a joking setting. I'm listening to you say this, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the folks that are listening to this, despite you saying this is not an April Fool's joke, they're going to be going, man, this has got to be an April Fool's joke. They used crickets, but it happened apparently. It's crazy. It's wild. No, I've never heard of such in an actual situation. I never have.
Well, as it turns out, it is actually a thing. Yeah. I mean, you go search it on the internet. I found this is a post on Archery Talk. I mean, Archery Talk National. This is. I mean, a lot of people are engaged in this community. Back in April of 2010, someone actually put a comment out there that I thought Primo's sold a call that sounds like crickets, and heard the heard the turkeys will come running, and it had a little wink. And I mean, really a lot of talk about it, and what will happen is people will be joking in these threads in these communities, but then the serious folks will come chiming in as we will do now. And that is that the Mississippi law as it relates to this is very clear that when you're talking about wild turkey, that the statute does not enable baiting of any sort, whether it be grain or live crickets or whatever, that any attractant of any sort is not legal, period. That's the bottom line. So once you get past the thought of, Lord, this is not corn on the ground, but this is literally crickets, live crickets that somebody released ahead of a turkey hunt, then you still you have to. It's an aid of supplemental feeding. I mean, that's what that is.
Yeah, I mean I'm trying to look past the absurdity of it, but yeah, I mean it's baiting. If someone is actually going out there and releasing, a lot, however many it was, but releasing crickets, I mean, yeah, that's baiting turkeys. It's a ridiculous way to do it, but it's what it is.
Yeah. So here's the thought about it. And by the way, have heard that there may be some prior offense on this property around baiting, still waiting to understand that. So not going to say the name of the property or the people involved at this stage, but still it's what it brings into focus. And this is a lot of what I've learned in talking to some lawyers and talking to law enforcement, especially in particular, a couple of law enforcement officials that used to be with the department. And that is that it isn't a defense to say that I didn't know. If you go hunt on a piece of property, this actually plays out a lot. Unfortunately, not a whole lot, but it does play out over the years. You'll find many cases like this that involve baited fields for dove hunting. So people will say, I didn't know that it was baited. But everybody gets ticketed. Usually, everyone gets ticketed. There will be some cases where maybe the law enforcement officer has some discretion, but usually everyone gets ticketed. And the courts tend to look at this in different ways. Now, sometimes the courts support law enforcement and the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and they follow through with a conviction. In some cases, depending on the judge and the situation, people will continue to deny that they knew anything about it. They didn't have any knowledge of it, and they were hunting in an area where they felt like there was no baiting. They were guaranteed there was no baiting, whatever the situation was in that case, and judges kind of tend to go along with them. But this is going to be a very interesting case, and it's going to raise a lot of questions about supplemental feeding in general. We're already talking about it as it relates to CWD. We're going to continue to talk about the various forms of baiting, because live crickets is something new to me. But we'll all watch the news together as SuperTalk News breaks this story, and then once we understand more about it, we'll talk more about it. But when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Lake Pickle. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Again, I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for joining us. The feedback on the show continues to be literally incredible. You look at the numbers on Facebook, and we get it. Facebook just one element. You've got YouTube, and you've got Instagram, and they're posting segments on X, formerly Twitter. Of course, you've got all the podcast platforms. You got radio. Radio is always going to be king, but I'm told that people kind of drop what they're doing and want to see what the latest edition of Super Talk Outdoors is going to be about. And I appreciate you joining us. I mean, the level of engagement with the show has been really, really good. And I appreciate you joining me today, Lake. You never know what we're going to talk about, but now we're going to shift gears and just talk a little bit about our love of hunting and fishing and whatever else. But it's been interesting. You have been really in the woods a lot lately, hadn't you?
Yeah, man, it's my favorite time of year. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. We're at the part of the time of year where it's like, I think this past weekend, Saturday morning, it was crisp. It was mid 40s. It was sunny. There was turkeys gobbling. There was mountain azaleas blooming. There was dogwoods blooming. It doesn't get any better for someone that has the affinities that I have.
Yeah, my son Jordan's been out a lot, and I would think that if you were to add up the number of miles that he's walked in his 4 or 5 hunts that he's done, probably 50 miles. He's been out a couple of mornings and heard some gobbles, but he's had some really quiet mornings, unfortunately. He had a decent hunt that he was on with his friend Jake Carter. Actually, last few days, they were on a bird. It was gobbling like crazy, and they got where they felt was a good position to set up. They started to set up, and the bird was inside 40 yards. They didn't realize it was that close, and they spooked it. How many times did that happen to you?
Oh man, countless. I had the opportunity to hunt with a great young man during youth season. And guy's name was Cooper Reno. He's 11 years old and just fantastic kid. I mean, from just enjoying the experience to, I was talking to his dad. I was trying to explain to his dad. It's like, not one time did I have to turn and go, Cooper, shh. Like he understood it. He knew what he had to do. He understood the process. Anyway, we ended up, my really good friend Keith Polk and I were with him, and ended up calling, early season, youth season are still in fairly big sized flocks. So we called a number of turkeys into gun range. I think some of them are 20 yards. I was backed up calling. Keith was sitting with Cooper, but they came up hard off of his left shoulder. So, I mean, if he's facing this way, the turkeys show up over here, and he just couldn't get a shot off, and we didn't get a turkey. And I said, Cooper, he was excited. You could tell he enjoyed the moment, but there also was that little bit of disappointment because he just didn't quite seal the deal. And I said, Cooper, if you go talk to anybody that's turkey hunted for any length of time and you tell them that the turkey showed up in a place you didn't expect, no one's going to say, well, that doesn't sound like a turkey at all. They're going to go, yeah, it's about right. That's what they do.
I told the story of my son, Jordan. I think I've mentioned this to you before. When he was in law school, he would get up at 3 a.m. to get to public land. And this is all before class started. And he was on a bird for several days, if not longer. I don't remember the amount of time, but it was, he would have to walk deep into the woods, and it was essentially the same area every time that he went. And it was back and forth between him and this turkey, and he never shot the turkey. But the way he talks about it, it's the most thrilling, exciting thing he's ever been on, and never pulled the trigger. That's when someone talks about turkey hunting like that, that that they're a turkey hunter, don't you?
Oh, 100%. Jordan Blissett and I were talking just the other day, and we drove by this familiar place, and it was funny because when we drove by this certain road, I thought about this hunt that I had with Jordan. I'm sitting there thinking about it, and then Jordan goes, "You remember that time that we should have killed a turkey in there, and you and I both screwed it up and spooked him?" And I was like, I was thinking about that just this second. And he goes, "I swear I remember those more than I do the ones that I end up getting." I'm like, same. It's the ones that just slip away from you that stay in here.
Oh yeah, I mean that's exactly my case too. One that I remember really well. Actually what happened is I was talking to a friend of mine over the weekend who was on a bird, and it was an area where it was a lot of hills, so there's a lot of ridges and whatever. So when and I know I have a story I'll tell you about this, but when ridges are involved, you can hear them echoing. You don't know if it's over the next ridge or the next ridge, but you call, and man, they gobble, and there's this like echo through these bottoms that are in between the ridges. And so a friend of mine that was on one, and same scenario, just over the next ridge kind of deal, and he never could get to the bird. But what that reminded me of is my son Jordan and I were hunting outside of Meridian once. I mean, and where we were hunting was extremely hilly. I mean, real high ridges, and then back down again, and then it'd be kind of. I mean, this is all high, so it's not bottoms like bottomland hardwood where you have swamps and stuff like that, but just big gullies between each of the ridges. And we walked along, and then and we could hear the bird gobbling, and then we'd be back on the next ridge. And these ridges, I mean, you know the story, but as you're walking up, these are very steep ridges, so you're literally out of breath. So we're coming up, and we could hear the bird gobbling. We're coming up, and we got to the plateau of the ridge, and the moment we got there, standing literally right in front of us was the turkey.
Oh no.
And it scared us and him. Of course, when you find that situation, the bird just flies off. I mean, it's just they're like a white-tailed deer, man. They just vanish. You all you get a chance is to watch your hunt dissolve literally in a microsecond.
They just kind of explode and they're gone just when they're out.
Yeah. So you've seen that a few times, haven't you?
Again, countless, more than I care to admit, but it's part of it. I was telling the guy the other day, it's like, I think to become a good, quote, good turkey hunter, you got to be a bad one first, and that being said, it's like, and I would never consider myself anything special in the turkey woods, but I've been able to go a lot, and I still mess up, man. I've spooked turkeys this year. It's just part of it. And you learn from it. You pick yourself up and you go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But you press forward.
Well, you've had, as you and I have discussed before, you have kind of a natural connection to the outdoors. It's kind of part of your DNA. But to have the opportunity to hunt with people like Brad Ferris and Will Primos, and to do it in their world and learn from sort of these masters, and not just them. I mean, you've had the opportunity to hunt with so many amazing, incredible turkey hunters, but you get a sense of the religious experience that you and I talked about before. That is, the actual shooting of the bird is kind of it's the cherry on top, but it's the experience. And as Will has said, as we've talked about before, this notion of being in a dream that in a prayer that you don't have to pray because you're actually in a prayer that is as close to God as you're ever going to get. Yeah. But to have hunted with these people, man, it does increase your sense of awareness of how special it really is, doesn't it?
So yes, short answer, yes. I was talking to Will just this morning, a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Clay Newcomb. He's become a dear friend, and Clay's someone that I enjoy to hunt with because I can tell that he enjoys it. And Clay was down here just this past week. We had an amazing hunt, and Clay was able to kill a turkey, and it was honestly, I mean, I don't know if there's a bad way to have a good turkey hunt, but the way that happened with his was one of my favorites. So Clay and we ended up hearing a turkey late in the morning. I think it was like 10:45, and the bird just ended up come charging in. I think we had him dead at 11. And so, but anyhow, I hadn't been able to tell Will about that hunt, and so I'm describing, so I kind of glossed over it when I was talking to him on the phone, and Will goes, "Wait, wait, 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 wait." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Well, tell me what happened." And so I just start describing it to Will on the phone because at that point I knew what he wants because I know Will, and so I'm like, "Man, he gobbled," and then Clay could see him, and I'm hearing the drumming, and this is the funny part, and you'll get this because you know Will. I said I finally saw him. He popped up over this little ridge and just immediately went into strut, and Will goes, "Ooh." Just hearing it over the phone, it's just a connection to it, and that's what, at that point, it's like, I think long beards are cool. I think long spurs are cool. I think all that stuff's great, but the why I do it is that moment,
Yeah.
with the turkey, looking at them and getting to watch them do what they do. That's the experience, and that's what just wants you to immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, it's there's something to, and we'll chat about this on the other side, but there's something too that's so powerful about that youthful exuberance. This no matter how old you are, you can still be amazed. That you don't get numb to the amazement. That's what makes it so darn cool. There's certain aspects of fishing. I'll give you some examples on the other side that they kind of bring that out in me as well. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Lake Pickle. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Lake Pickle. I love when he visits us, and we're just kind of we're just talking about the joy of hunting. We could write a book called The Joy of Hunting. When we went to break, though, you were mentioning telling the story to Will Primos and how Will didn't want you to skip over the story. He wanted you to tell the story. And even to hear the story, there's this sort of youthful exuberance about the way he's hearing the story. Mm-hmm. I have a friend of mine. His name is Reed Geis. He's a very accomplished fly fisherman. He loves to fly fish. Been all over the world fly fishing. Been on the show before. I need to get Reed back. I need to introduce you to Reed. But my son Jordan refers to Reed in that way, that everything he sees, it's like he sees it from the eyes of a 6-year-old. No matter how many times he sees it, it's always, "Oh my goodness, would you look at that? Oh look at the fly. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful." He has a low, Wade Jordan describes, he has a low amazement, a low threshold for amazement. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that, I would describe Will that way. I describe me that way in certain situations. Like if I'm offshore and we come up to, say, some floating debris, and immediately we see down a little bit deeper some dolphins, and the blue and green colors of those flashing, and we see a triple tail come out from underneath it coming toward the boat, or maybe we see a lemonfish. It's the same thing, man. It's just like I could see that every time I see that. It can be the first time. It can be the first time that I've seen it. Just mm-hmm. I can't get enough of that, man. I mean, that's what it's all about. But that's what hunting does for us. And then even if you get numb to some aspects of it, like the reality is that if you take a friend to do it that's experiencing it for the first time, or you take a child experiencing it for the first time, that's one of the things I love about taking kids deer hunting. Mm-hmm. Is I just watch it through their eyes. I think we can't take enough kids out into the woods, but it's not just the shooting. It might be the tracking. It might be just, scouting and watching it through their eyes. I'll have a tendency to video from behind my 6-year-old grandson as he's walking through the woods, and, what he's saying and what he's noticing and how he's learning about it. Gosh, that's so cool though, man. I mean, isn't that what keeps us coming back for more?
It 100% it does. I mean, that's like the woods is where I get my reset. The woods are my equilibrium, and that may sound a little bit. If it does sound hyperbolic, I don't mean it to, but I promise you that it's not. I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world, right? And to have the opportunity to go somewhere into the woods where the rhythm of what those turkeys and those songbirds and those barred owls and those white-tailed deer, the rhythm that they walk to, that has not ever changed. They're just doing what they've been doing, and there's a reason why we gravitate to that. There's a reason why I gravitate to it, and the fish that you're talking about, it's the same way. There's this natural rhythm and nature, and it's magnetizing, and you can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of it. I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, I mean, it's like, take the youth season example that I was talking about in the last segment. I told Keith, and he got a kick out of it. I said, I've been fortunate enough to be able to see a lot of wild turkeys in my lifetime, but in that youth hunting situation, I was dropped back calling because the woods are so open and everything, and so I did not get to see the turkeys. And albeit I've gotten to see a lot of them, and I really hoped that Cooper got to shot one. When I heard them saying, they were like, yeah, he was off to our left, and they were strutting and drumming, there was part of me that was going, I wanted to see him.
Gosh, isn't that true? But I mean, for people who are really avid hunters, who are drawn to the woods and this aura of being in the outdoors, they get this. And to be honest with you, people who may be listening to this show who aren't hunters, who are curious about it, I always like to reflect on that. Is some of my best hunts, I didn't ever pull the trigger. Some of my best hunts were what I saw, or maybe who I was with at the moment, or some of my best hunting experiences weren't even during hunting season. It was during, work at the camp. I mean, it's whether it's planting, or whether it's creating new food plots and improving the land, or that's always the thing. We did tend to focus a lot about on the the event around the gun, but at the end of the day, it's the total experience, and that's what I love most about it. I mean, in fact, if you read about, there's a guy named Middleton. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but he wrote a wonderful book called, I think it's called On the Spine of Time, if I remember it correctly. But he's writing about the fly fishing experience in North Carolina, and the way he talks about it, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's got nothing to do with catching the fish. It's about the stream and the small insects that are part of that stream, and how he's going to be challenged during his next fly tying experiments to match that, and how it affects his soul, and that's what it is to me,
Oh, yeah. So I'll bring up. I've already brought up Jordan Bliss at one time, and that's more than usual for me. But I kid. Jordan's like my brother. Everyone knows that. But Jordan recently bought a property, and he's been doing a lot of work on it since he bought it, and he's been doing some prescribed burning. And Jordan heard a turkey on his property where he burned, and the excitement that dude had. For every turkey he's killed so far this season, I was with him when he killed it. The excitement that he had of hearing a turkey on his place where he did habitat work was above the excitement level of any turkey he'd shot so far this season.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, and you'll understand this too. It's like I love hunting turkeys, I always will. I don't have to just hunt them to appreciate or want them to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's big. I think about your relationship with Jordan, and it's just super special. You guys get to do your open seasons, work together. You get to hunt together. You've really had tremendous experiences as it relates to your Primos hunting experiences. I think about, some of the coolest shows that I remember seeing was when you guys were, you were on to a deer, but you had to set up to get to it, and the way you would go about getting set up to get to it, and watching him have success with a bow and those kind of scenarios. And you shared each other's experiences around that, but true excitement, the pursuit of the outdoors, true excitement, the elk hunts that you've been on with the Primos team. It's really it's the ultimate team sport in a way when you talk about it. And someone said it, because I've not done it yet, but if you like turkey hunting, if you really like turkey hunting, you're going to love elk hunting, because you're having a conversation with the elk just like you're having a conversation with the turkey, and you will be addicted to that stuff. And y'all have had the opportunity to be through all these experiences together, and that's the stories you could tell
I'm ever thankful for it, and the older I get, the more and more aware I become how rare some of this stuff is, from the experiences to the friendships and to the point where we've been able, even, I mean, because all of us are kind of going different direction these days, and the fact
Yeah.
that we're able to stay in such constant contact with each other. I mean, like the fact that when I took the job at Onyx, and then I was a work remote position, so where my wife and I ended up buying this house was based on where she was working. And then Jordan and his wife end up buying a house. It was a like the longest period of Jordan and I not communicating, not because we were mad at each other or anything. We just were both just running around crazy, had a lot going on. Well, we end up buying houses like Jordan lives 15 minutes from me, and we didn't plan that. So there's folks that used to watch us doing primos. They're like, "Do you see Jordan anymore?" I'm like, "I see Jordan every week. Sometimes I don't even want to see him, and I just see him."
But you had a stretch in the last few days where you were getting up at 3:30 every single morning.
Yeah.
And you were pursuing hard, weren't you?
Yeah, we're still doing a good bit of filming stuff for the Onyx side of things, and yeah, some of those 3:30 mornings were with Jordan. The rest of them were with Clay Newcomb, and Clay and Brad Ferris at the end of it. So I mean, like, it all kind of ends up coming back together. But yeah, we were getting after it. But as exhausted as I was at the end of that stretch, I would not trade that for anything else. It is worth it to be standing in those woods, in the last situation, to be standing in the woods right along the Mississippi River listening to barred owls at gobbling turkeys before daylight. I would not trade that for anything in the world. For anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I really am thankful that I've had the opportunity to do Super Talk Outdoors, because it's brought me into friendships with so many incredible people. I mean, I got to meet Chipper Gibbs, who was on my show recently. What a terrific dude he is. And of course, Brad and the team. But I'm very fortunate. I get to know these people who are, in the heart of their hearts, they are conservationists, and they care deeply about Mississippi, but they have national names. That's the beauty of it. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll have a final segment with my friend Jordan. Listen to me, Jordan. Lake Pickle. Had Jordan in the skull with Lake Pickle. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. We have my friend Lake Pickle with us today, and it's been funny. During the break we just chatted a little bit about how, at the base of this show, always what I've hoped this show would be about is more the campfire stories. And so you get some of the issues on the commission. We'll get, we'll talk about those things. And certainly as legislation comes up, we're going to talk about those things as well. But the majority of the time, what I love most about this show is the chance to do, sit around the campfire and tell stories, because you find me a hunter that hunts with other people. And one of the main reasons they hunt is because they want to be around other people. They want to tell stories. They want to learn from them. And we want the most experienced and the wise among us to pass down what they've learned over the years. And that's what makes the experience so much fun. So I'm enjoying having this conversation with Lake this morning. Lake, for people who are not on YouTube or Facebook or SuperTalk TV, should remind them that what is behind you is sort of a memorial to your turkey hunting experience. Explain to people what we're looking at.
So this is like I don't know when I started this whole project. It's kind of, I mean, most of this is like a reflection of my Primo's spring years, but it's just all my turkey fans, or I shouldn't say all of them, but it is most of my turkey fans, and I kind of figured out a way. I had this idea in my head of doing a fan wall, where it's just kind of like this one big mosaic of turkey fans. And thankfully, my wife thinks turkey fans are pretty, so she was okay with it. And so yeah, I think it turned out well.
Yeah, I'm looking at one right now, but just one. What's interesting, looking at what's behind you, it looks like you have some different species of turkeys behind you. At least it appears that way.
Yeah. There's some Merriams, there's some Rios, there's some Osceolas in there. I tell you this is can you see the map over here?
Yeah, I see a map to your right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the first present that my wife gave me. We were dating at the time, but she knew that the first turkey I ever killed in my life was in Copiah County. And she knew, or even early on, she was very aware of how much turkeys and turkey hunting meant to me. And so that is just an old topographic map of Copiah County that she got me.
Well, hey, that shows she gets it,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
hey,
very much.
My wife, Ann, is a Bohanovic. She's from the point of Biloxi. Her grandparents literally came here from Croatia. And a couple of years ago, Ann and I went to Croatia and the islands off the country of Croatia where they're from. What a beautiful country. At the time, very, very oppressed, and that's what led them here. So there were a lot of French families and Yugoslavian families and ultimately Vietnamese families and others who settled in the point of Biloxi that were centered around the seafood industry. But I used to joke long before I knew her that I'm going to get married to the woman who can rig a sea witch, a cigar minnow on a sea witch for like king mackerel fishing. Yeah. I used to just joke about that. Well, one day we were in the boat. This is before we got married. And it's just Ann and me, and we're trolling for king mackerel. And I'm looking at her rigging a cigar minnow on a sea witch, and I'm like, this is it, man. We're gonna. And then she and I caught a bull shark once out of the Gulf of Mexico. This is before they were doing state records in Mississippi. But at the time, it was the largest bull shark ever out of the Gulf of Mexico. And then that same year, one even bigger was caught over in Florida. This is for a tournament we fished many years ago. And then, but if it would have been, at the time, Mississippi only had shark records. They didn't have broke down to various species, but it would be the state record still in the state by many, 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 many pounds. And that in itself is a great story. But the point is, man, I married someone who loved to fish as much as I did. And even today, I mean, she loves it. Like if they're going to go out and catch some bait before we go do an offshore trip, she'll take the grandkids and they'll all go out and fill the live bait well full of bait. But that's what you found in your wife too, isn't it? Someone who really loves the experience.
It's done so much more for, I guess, the joy I already got out of hunting, just being able to share some of that with her and watching her enjoy it, and not just turkey hunting. My wife and I both, but we're big dog people, and she had never done any duck hunting or anything like that, and so she loves our dogs, and so I was like, if you go duck hunting, the dog gets to come with us, and she was like, oh, I want to do that, and so it has been so much fun hunting with her. It's been a highlight for sure.
Yeah, it's family and the outdoors. A family that hunts and fishes together stays together. I'm convinced of that. I've raised my kids in that environment, and now we're raising our grandkids in that environment, and it makes all the difference in the world. And you'll do the same thing. Lake, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, man. Thanks for coming in and weighing in on the important stories of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I look forward to being back.
You bet. Next time we're together, we'll talk more about the Primos podcast and see what the latest there. Hey, when we listen, have a great weekend. Always stay safe. A great week. Always stay safe when you're in the outdoors. Always stay safe. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.